Recently, I found myself at the centre of more than a few moderately heated debates on the subject of sim racing car setups, and specifically whether it's okay to buy, sell, or trade them. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I didn't really think this was a particularly contentious topic, but it turns out that, surprisingly enough, some sim racers have some pretty strong opinions, so I thought, yeah, that sounds like a video. Hello fellow sim racers, it's been a while since I made one of these opinion piece videos, and since it would get pretty boring to just watch me talking, I'm going to intersperse some racing footage because, let's not kid ourselves, we're all here for the cars. The market for selling sim setups seems to be growing, and that's no big surprise to me. As sims become more popular, more professional, and more complex, the demand for something that's genuinely quite difficult to DIY well was bound to increase. But they're not for everyone. So then, let's just jump straight into the topic. Why would you buy a sim racing car setup? Well, the short answer is because you're a fully functioning adult, at least on paper, and you can do whatever the hell you want. That's it. That's the answer. But it's not a very compelling one, so let's start by taking a look at the reasons that some people think that buying car setups is pointless, wrong, and according to at least one commenter I spoke to, unethical. And along the way, I'm going to do a little bit of myth busting as well. This was by far the most common negative response I heard from the community. Simply put, there are lots of sim racers who just don't see the potential value in a professional, commercial setup. And I guess that's the crux of any purchase decision, be it car setups or novelty footwear. Does the product align with my values, or does it solve a problem? And if you're confident that you can develop a competitive setup yourself and you have the time and ability to do so, then you're probably not the target audience. But then again, maybe you are. I've been building car setups for years, and I like to think I know the subject pretty well. But I subscribe to a setup service on iRacing, and I've purchased setups in Assetto Corsa Competizione. For me, the value in this is twofold. The biggest by far is the time saving. Developing a setup takes dozens of hours and thousands of kilometers to do properly, and honestly, I just don't have the time to do that anymore. And I'd wager that most sim racers are in the same position. The second factor for me is that it removes any element of doubt about the setup. I know that if I'm not achieving the lap times that I need to, then the problem is in the seat and not in the car. I've spoken about what it takes to develop setups extensively in the past, but I thought I'd reach out to David Perel for the purposes of the video to get his take on the subject and find out how Coach Dave Academy produces their setups, and honestly just to get the other side of the story, but more about that in the second half of the video. This was another common comment, and I'm tempted to respond with something glib like, why do you pay to go to the dentist when your mate Barry's got a pair of mole grips and a can-do attitude? But actually, there is something in that. Like anything else on the internet that's free, there is a huge variance in quality, with the vast majority populating the, how do I put this delicately, totally fucking hopeless end of the spectrum. There are good setups out there, like flecks of gold in the gravel-filled pan, but most of them, well, they're just rocks. And of course, what do you do when that killer Barcelona setup you found is predictably unusable at Sebring? Were Michael Schumacher's engineering team faster than him? I mean, probably, right? Honestly, I find this argument a bit lacking. Driving and engineering are two pretty distinct skills, and while both are informed by the other, there's just not the same thing. Concert pianists call a piano tuner when things are drifting out of key, and racing drivers have engineers. Sim racers have to wear both hats, which, well, it does make things more complicated, but that doesn't mean that faster sim racers will make faster setups, or the inverse for that matter. This one does have something to it. Most top-end sim racers use setups that are pretty edgy, since that's usually the way to go fastest, and it does require a fair amount of skill to keep on top of that. But even then, race setups are usually a lot safer, especially for endurance-focused events, and most commercial setups I've seen will include both quali and race setups for this very reason. But there's also an elephant in the room that we really do need to address. There's a very narrow range of differences in driving style that will allow you to go quickly in any given sim. And of course, there is a theoretical optimum style as well. So if your driving style doesn't suit setups made by the guys that are closest to this optimum, then again, the problem's in the chair and not in the car. Yes, finally, someone call the Haye. A great injustice has been perpetrated. Experts are selling their knowledge. The audacity. Honestly, I don't want to give a serious answer to this one because I just don't think it really deserves it. There are numerous reasons that you may want to buy a commercial setup. For some, it's lack of time. For others, it's lack of detailed knowledge or confidence in their car setup abilities. Some want to remove the element of doubt, and others may just want a consistent driving experience from circuit to circuit. For these people, the value proposition is obvious. But what about everyone else? What exactly are you paying for, and how do you know the setup will actually help? I thought the best way to provide a counter-argument here would be to reach out to David Perel, who I'm sure you all know, and to find out exactly what goes into the process of creating the setups that Coach Dave Academy sells. First of all, I was surprised to learn that the setups are created by a team of people, headed up by James Parker, who I've had on the channel before to talk about ACC setups. And he's supported by other esport competitors that you may know as well, such as Ulti and Josh Martin. On top of that, David provides his input, guidance, and real-world experience into the mix. In fact, James works full-time on these setups, which I think may be unique. Now, David was keen to stress that this whole thing came about because he himself didn't have the time to dedicate to developing the kind of setups he needed on his own, what with the whole being a professional racing driver thing. And for me, time is also the biggest motivator. Developing a successful setups or series of setups takes a huge amount of work. The setups provided by Coach Dave Academy are developed and tested over 14 days by a team of people. They're backed up by thousands of laps, copious data, and some interesting methodology brought over from the real world. A full testing program is undertaken, run sheets generated, data analysed and tested, and then blind testing is conducted to try and remove any biases from the process. Now, I don't have the time to do all of that, and I'm pretty sure I don't know anyone who does. And I think that's where some of the disconnect occurs from those that are opposed to buying setups. For me, a setup is a serious project to undertake, while others will change a few values to make a car a little bit more suited to their liking and then call it a day. If you're in that second category, I totally get why you wouldn't see the value in purchasing a car setup, but equally, I wouldn't call that process setting up the car either. I've somehow managed to make it this far into the video without mentioning pace, which I think demonstrates remarkable restraint on my behalf. But it is a big part of the equation. Will a commercial setup make you faster? And for the average sim racer, the answer probably is yes, although no amount of setup work will be able to counter any serious deficiencies in your driving, so a reasonable baseline level of ability is a must-have. Something else to consider is that a pro setup may not make a massive amount of difference in terms of one-lap pace, where the fuel level and the fresh tyres make the operating window in which the car's, operating pretty narrow. But over a race distance, a setup that behaves well as the tyres start to go off and the fuel burns away from the car, you may well see a greater impact. There's also a philosophical point to make here. Getting any kind of setup, free or paid, will require some tailoring to suit your needs. But a good, consistent baseline series of setups to work from will get you closer to the mark quicker. The trick then for commercial setup providers is to produce setups that are both fast and accessible to a wide range of drivers, which, that's no mean feat. Ultimately, if you're the sort of person that's considering buying a commercial setup, you're probably not an esport pro or one of the aliens. In fact, when I was speaking to David, he put it beautifully. This is really a product for the AMs and the pro-AMs rather than the pros. And then of course there's the better drivers that have other motivations like freeing up time or just sheer laziness. So guys, that's my take on the subject. Tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.